A while back, I made a video in which I talked about the first 4 seasons of the 2003 4Kids adaptation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now it's time to return to the world of the Turtles and take a look at Season 5, also known as The Lost Episodes. Now, just as a quick reminder, this is the season that was supposed to air directly after 4, before the decision was made to, well, fast forward. These episodes were heavily advertised around the idea of being lost, even if they never were. I remember being a bit confused by this as a kid, wondering how do you lose an entire season? Even as a 10-year-old, I was skeptical, and I was a dumb kid.
But if it's still in the vault, it's technically not lost.
Picking up right where Season 4 left off, Season 5 finds the Turtles now in Japan, which I'm just now realizing is always treated like a fantasy setting. You never really see Japan portrayed as a modern place with just regular everyday people walking around. It's a bit odd. The Turtles are just 4 of 8 acolytes who have been chosen by the Ninja Tribunal to train in preparation for a coming threat, the return of the original Shredder, the Tengu Shredder, otherwise known as the Demon Shredder. Unlike the previous seasons, which each consisted of 26 episodes, Season 5 was much shorter, consisting of only 12. Something I think was for the best, considering this season is focused on telling one continuous story and avoids having too many episodes that could be classified as filler. I honestly think there's only 2 episodes like that this whole season, but you do have to take the smaller number of episodes into consideration. Although, to be perfectly honest, I've never really liked the word filler. It just seems like a way to say episodes not connected to an overarching story don't matter as much, and frankly, I think that's total BS. As I just mentioned, this season revolves heavily around the Tengu Shredder. The idea behind this version of the character is that he started out as the original Orokusaki, a great warrior who made a deal with a demon in order to conquer Japan.
You could rule all, have all. Just allow me inside your soul, and the world will be yours.
He was defeated by the Ninja Tribunal, who sealed him away inside a coffin, and contained his power within separate pieces of his armor. This also means that the Utram Shredder was in fact not the original Shredder, and rather an imposter that took up the mantle. Now, do I like the idea of the Utram Shredder not being the original? Yes and no. I do in fact like the Tengu Shredder quite a bit. For one, he's got a badass design. I really love the color scheme used for him. That cape does wonders. That, and he's clearly a far more powerful threat, possessing magic powers and all of that. On the other hand, I don't like them building up Utram Shredder to be the baddest of the bad and then deciding to retcon all that in what was originally intended to be the final season. The Turtles aren't alone in their training, as the other 4 acolytes are all pretty fun characters that share a similar purpose.
You're kidding. You're gonna put missiles in it? That's great!
Oh, I know. It'll have armor plating, a communication center, and be fully remote accessible.
Man, that's awesome!
Not too much is really known about these characters' own personal lives, but their presence really reminds me of characters you'd see partake in a Mortal Kombat. There's a lot of strong Mortal Kombat vibes in this season. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but a lot of the Lost episodes to me feels like the team was made up of Mortal Kombat fans, and this is, in some ways, their answer to a Mortal Kombat cartoon. I mean, there have been family-friendly Mortal Kombat cartoons before, so it's not that far-fetched.
Liu Kang, Princess Kitana, Sub-Zero, Jax.
But hey, a season of Ninja Turtles that feels like something out of Mortal Kombat is fine by me. This is definitely one of the more unique stories to use the characters. I should also take the time to mention that the Ninja Tribunal, who looked similar to the Shredder beforehand, reveal their true forms in episode 1, as ninjutsu masters, each with their own unique, godlike abilities.
All things will be explained in time. As for training, it begins now.
Splinter and Ancient One also travel to Japan to warn the Turtles that it is foolish to face the Tengu Shredder. The two of them have a troubled past with the Tribunal, who tend to leave events up to fate and did nothing to help Hamato Yoshi in his time of need. The first half of this season mostly revolves around the Acolytes training for the coming threat. The 8 Acolytes are each gifted with a magic amulet that allows them to gain access to their full potential. Besides making them glow, it also allows each of them to access their avatars, something which will come into play later this season. They're also gifted with mystic weapons, which are really dope in their designs. There's actually a lot of cool designs in this season. It's also worth noting that Season 5 has a really beautiful color scheme and is easily the most visually appealing the 2003 show has ever looked. I personally know very little about color theory and how all of that works, but damn does this make my eyeballs happy. Eventually, the Turtles are given the task of retrieving the stolen artifacts that once belonged to the ancient Shredder. This doesn't go as planned, as the Shredder's minions, elemental lords known as the Heralds, manage to capture the artifacts for themselves and succeed in resurrecting the Tengu Shredder. It's also revealed later that those heralds were actually the mystic ninjas all along. I don't know if this was something the writers had planned from the start or something they just came up with on the spot. I'd say there's a good 90% chance it was the latter, but I suppose it does a bit more to make everything in the overall story feel a bit more interconnected. The episode in which the heralds free the Shredder also results in the supposed defeat of the Ninja Tribunal as well as the other 4 acolytes. I mean, what do you expect? The Turtles are the main characters. They can't have some secondary characters hogging the spotlight.
Go! Go!
Fatality.
Episode 6 sees the Turtles return to New York City. This one is a much lighter departure from the previous 5 episodes, being a superhero-themed episode in which the Justice Force is looking for a new member. We also get to see a bit of what's going on with Bishop and Stockman, but the main focus of this episode is Nano, who finally gets a satisfying conclusion to his ongoing struggles as a killer robot who just wants a family. This episode, however, was not originally intended to be the 6th episode of the season, as the real episode 6 was cancelled and would have been called Nightmares Recycled. Nightmares Recycled would have revolved heavily around the character of the Garbage Man and make the shocking revelation that he and Hun were once conjoined twins. That's right, we almost got a basket case episode of Ninja Turtles. Supposedly, the episode got far enough into production for animation to begin on it, but 4Kids deemed the whole conjoined twins thing to be too controversial for a kids show last second, which, to be fair, might be a bit much for kids. Not that I don't think most kids would be okay with it. This explains why Season 5, despite being almost half the length, is 12 episodes instead of 13. There's a lot of information about the episode online, and while I'm not really that bummed out about it not being made, I do think it would have added a lot to Hun's character and given him some necessary screen time, which he barely gets this season. I should also point out that in my last video, I had said that Hun had used 2 different voice actors in the show, although I wasn't exactly sure when the change happened, but now I can confidently say that Season 5 was when they changed voice actors, because as an adult, this is very noticeable.
I did okay with the old Shredder, and he was just a tiny, shriveled, broom-faced alien bug.
2003 Ninja Turtles had this recurring problem of always wanting to delve into darker material, and 4Kids, being overly cautious about that. I think the fact that later seasons of the show did go in a more lighthearted direction and weren't as well regarded really shows that the creators knew the darker, edgier content was a big part of what made this show so successful to begin with. Episode 7 brings us back to the main plot, with the Tengu Shredder and his minions making their way to New York with plans to conquer it, along with the rest of the world. We also get to see the return of Karai, who is still taking on the legacy of her father and is all too familiar with the existence of the Demon Shredder. She gets to prove that she's a total badass in the next 2 episodes, as she takes on the Shredder with a little bit of help from Chaplin. who has succeeded in building a new technology that combines magic with science.
This is delicate work. Nobody's ever tried this kind of magic tech before. It's taking some time.
Chaplin is a character I completely forgot to mention in the last video. He was pretty much Baxter Stockman's replacement for the Shredder, who was far more loyal, but also had this sort of happy-go-lucky nerd attitude to him that made it easy to see why Stockman despised him so much.
Dr. Stockman, this is so great! You and I are a team again. Isn't it just so awesome?
Thrilling beyond words.
It's heavily implied and pretty much confirmed by the end that he has a thing for Karai, which makes perfect sense. I mean, what nerd wouldn't? Things start to ramp up by this point with the Tengu Shredder defeating Karai and the Turtles nursing her back to health. This is the turning point where she becomes an ally, but I would be lying if I didn't admit it feels a bit rushed, especially with just how far gone she had seemed in the previous season. Episode 8 is when the avatars mentioned earlier come into play as the Turtles transform into their spirit animals, which all happen to be dragons. I'm pretty alright with this. I know some people find this aspect of the season to be kinda dumb, but we are talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles here. The only thing I would change is have them be giant fire-breathing turtles instead, like Gamera. That would be cool. The episode that follows these two, titled Fathers and Sons, is a nice change of pace, revealing that the Turtles had once traveled to Japan years ago to visit the Ancient One, but had their minds wiped in the process. I think it was wise of this season to occasionally have a more lighthearted episode to deter from the heavier stuff. This show never did forget, at the end of the day, that it was mainly for kids. The next 3 episodes are the last of the season, starting with episode 10, Past and Present, before moving on to the 2-part finale, Enter the Dragons. This is where we witness previous characters from the past, both heroes and villains alike, team up for what was originally intended to be the final showdown. It's also revealed that the other acolytes are all still alive. Didn't see that coming.
But we awoke in the ruins of the Tribunal's monastery.
Bruised, battered, but very much alive.
Thanks to the power of the Ninja Tribunal, no doubt.
The Shredder is defeated via the use of dragons, again, as they manage to separate and destroy pieces of his armor to drain him of his power. The final blow is struck by the reincarnated spirit of Hamato Yoshi. It's yet another Deus Ex Machina of an ending, but it is somewhat satisfying seeing this character get his revenge. Serves justice. And with the looming threat extinguished, a new era begins, with each character going their separate ways. Karai takes Chaplin's hand, which I assume means they're a couple now, or at least gonna go on a date or two and see if it all works out. Bishop just kinda goes back to being evil, taking Baxter Stockman, who just wants to die with him.
It seems the pain will never end.
The writers just kind of forget about Han. I can only assume he's gonna keep committing crimes. I mean, why wouldn't he? Oh, and the Ninja Tribunal, they're also okay, because why not? This is where my biggest issue with the season comes into play. I feel up till this point, this season served as a terrific finale that really knew how to engage viewers, but it really just fizzles out in the last few minutes, with so many plot threads being left unsolved, and with many of the villains just continuing being villains. I know superheroes need their villains, that's what makes them heroes, but it really feels a bit too open-ended, like we needed another episode or two to explain what happens next with these characters. That, or at least a half-assed attempt at convincing us that they've turned over a new leaf in some way. If you are willing to ignore that aspect, then this is definitely one of the very best seasons of the show. I feel the decision to tell a continuous story through the span of 12 episodes mostly works quite well. There are some exceptions, mainly revolving around the various villains and their involvement in the plot, but this is still a season that I had a lot of fun with. It is a shame that these had to be rebranded as Lost episodes and weren't just released before Fast Forward, because it would have made more sense chronologically, but you can also just tell that a lot more care and passion was put into this one. I'd love to see more Ninja Turtle shows enter uncharted territories like this. I want to see new, exciting stories in the world of Ninja Turtles that move away from the more familiar ground that the Turtles tend to cover every time it's rebooted. It's like Thomas and Martha Wayne being shot. Everyone knows the Turtles' origin, so instead of coming up with new ways to slightly switch it up, I say it's time we advance the plot and take the Turtles one step forward into the future. And that's exactly what they did in 2006.
Now that's funny! Ninja Turtles Fast Forward is coming Saturday morning, June 21st to the CW for Kids.
So tune in next time when I cover Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fast Forward. I hope to see you there.